My name is Captain Claire Hartley. I am 36 years old. And on a Thursday morning in November, I walked into my commanding officer's office with 14 months of documented fraud evidence and was told that the program I had been working in for 14 months did not exist. Not that it had been shut down. Not that it had been restructured. That it had never existed. I put my folder on his desk. He did not look at it. He said, "Captain Hartley, I don't know what program you are referring to. I have no record of your assignment to any classified analytical unit beyond your standard posting here." I said, "Sir, I have 14 months of work product, reports, communications, budget analyses, all bearing the program's designation." He said, "I would advise you to be very careful about making claims regarding programs you cannot verify exist." He said it in the specific tone of someone delivering a message they have been given to deliver. I picked up the folder. I said, "Thank you, sir." I walked out. I sat in my vehicle in the parking lot. And I thought about the 14 months I had just been told did not happen. Then I thought about the one thing I had done 3 weeks ago that no one knew about. Let me tell you about the program first. Its designation was Alpha 9, 12 officers, all analytical backgrounds. Our work was classified above standard clearance levels. We reported through a chain that bypassed the normal command structure. We were told this was standard for programs of our classification level. I had been the only woman in Alpha 9. I had not thought about this much at first. I had been too focused on the work. The work was financial analysis, specifically the analysis of procurement contracts connected to 3 operational programs. Our job was to identify irregularities and report them upward through the special chain. For the first 8 months, I found nothing significant. Then I found something, not small, not ambiguous. $4.7 million moved through a procurement contract in a way that made no operational sense, routed through 3 intermediary accounts, landing in a civilian entity with no military connection. I documented it. I reported it upward through the Alpha 9 chain. I received an acknowledgement. Nothing happened. 3 weeks later, I found another instance. $2.3 million. Same routing pattern, different contract, same civilian entity at the end. I reported it again. Another acknowledgement. Nothing happened. By month 12, I had documented 7 instances, a total of $11.4 million, all moving through the same pattern, all ending at the same civilian entity. The civilian entity was registered in Delaware. Its director was a name I did not recognize. I ran the name. It connected to one person, a brigadier general named Marcus Holt. The object that I had protected for 3 weeks was a USB drive. Slim, black, the kind you buy at any electronics store. I had made a copy of everything 3 weeks before the Thursday morning when I was told Alpha 9 did not exist. Not because I had known this was coming, not exactly. Because something had felt wrong for 4 weeks, and I had been trained to act on that feeling rather than dismiss it. The copy was not on a base system, not on any network device, on a personal drive that I had taken home and placed in the specific location in my apartment that I used for things I needed to be certain would survive whatever came next. Behind the 3rd book on the 2nd shelf of my bookcase, a copy of my mother's collected letters from my father during his service. The book, Nobody Moves, the one that has been in the same position since I first put it there 11 years ago. The USB drive was behind that book. Alpha 9 had been erased from every official record on Thursday morning. The drive had not been erased. I sat in my vehicle and I thought about that for a long time. Then I drove home. I took the drive from behind the book. I held it in my hand, and I made the call I had been hoping for 14 months I would never need to make. Her name was Colonel Patricia Morrison, Inspector General's office. 22 years in military law. She answered on the 2nd ring. I told her everything in 7 minutes. Alpha 9, 14 months, 7 instances, $11.4 million. Marcus Holt, the civilian entity. The Thursday morning conversation with my commanding officer. The word never existed. Morrison was quiet for 6 seconds. Then she said, "Where are you right now?" I said, "My vehicle. Base parking lot." She said, "Drive away from the base, now. Not home. Somewhere neutral. A coffee shop, a library, somewhere public." I said, "I have a USB drive. A personal copy of everything." She was quiet for 2 seconds. She said, "Captain, that drive is the most important object in this situation. Do not let it out of your possession. Do not connect it to any network device." I said, "Understood." She said, "I am sending someone to you within 2 hours. They will identify themselves with a specific phrase. The phrase is November 14th. She said, "Can you wait 2 hours?" I said, "I have been waiting 14 months. 2 hours is nothing." I want to pause here, because sitting in a coffee shop for 2 hours with 14 months of evidence on a USB drive, while an entire program was being officially erased around me, is the moment this story became about something bigger than fraud. If you have ever held the only copy of a truth that someone powerful wanted to disappear, drop a comment below and subscribe right now. Because who walked into that coffee shop 2 hours later, and what they already knew is the part that changed everything. The person Morrison sent was a woman named Dr. Anna Reyes. She was not a soldier. She was a civilian investigator attached to the Inspector General's office, 44 years old. She sat down across from me in the coffee shop and said November 14th. Before she had fully settled into the chair, I handed her the drive. She plugged it into a device I did not recognize. She reviewed the contents for 11 minutes without speaking. Then she looked up. She said, "How did you route the copies?" I said, "Personal device. Air-gapped. Never connected to any base system after the initial extraction." She said, "When did you make the copy?" I said, 3 weeks ago. October 23rd. She said, "October 23rd. She said it in the way that people repeat dates when the date matters more than you knew when you chose it. I said, "What happened on October 23rd? And she said that was the day the order to erase Alpha 9 from official records was signed. You copied the drive on the same day the erasure order was issued." I said, "I didn't know about the order." She said, "I know." "But you felt something." I said, "Yes." She said, "Captain Hartley, you have been a woman in a program of 12 officers for 14 months. The only woman. Have you thought about why that might be relevant?" I looked at her. She said, "Programs that are designed to be erased are sometimes staffed with people who can be discredited. People whose accounts can be made to seem unreliable, whose documentation can be attributed to misunderstanding or personal grievance." She said, "You are the only woman in Alpha 9. You were also the one who found the fraud, and you were the one they expected to be easiest to discredit." I said, "They did not expect me to have a copy." She said, "No, they did not." She closed her device. She said, "The IG has been aware of irregularities connected to Marcus Holt for 8 months. We have been building a case through civilian channels. What we have lacked is internal documentation from inside the program itself." She looked at the drive. She said, "You have just given us 14 months of it. The investigation ran for 5 months. I was not idle during those months. Morrison placed me on temporary assignment to a research role within the IG office, close to the investigation, useful to it, protected by it. I provided testimony 7 times, written and recorded, every instance documented, every routing pattern explained, every connection between the 7 instances and the civilian entity traced clearly enough that the investigators could follow it without my guidance. Dr. Reyes worked with the documentation on the drive for 6 weeks. She called me at the end of those 6 weeks. She said, "It's complete. The pattern you identified is confirmed across all 7 instances, total of $11.4 million. The civilian entity in Delaware. Marcus Holt's connection established through 3 layers of corporate structure." She said, "The October 23rd copy date is significant in one more way I want you to know." I said, "Tell me." She said, "The erasure order signed that day included a secondary instruction. If any officer from Alpha 9 raised concerns about the program after erasure, they were to be referred for psychological evaluation. The evaluation was designed to produce a finding of stress-related impairment. She said, "You were named specifically in that secondary instruction." I said, "They had already planned what to do with me." She said, "Yes." She said, "What they had not planned for was November 14th. Brigadier General Marcus Holt was arrested on a Monday morning in April. The charges were significant: fraud against the government, abuse of authority, obstruction of a federal investigation, conspiracy to discredit a military officer. That last charge was because of the secondary instruction, the psychological evaluation that had been designed to destroy my credibility. He did not expect that charge. His attorney argued for 6 months. The trial lasted 8 weeks. He was convicted on all 4 charges. He is serving 12 years. My commanding officer, the man who had told me Alpha 9 never existed, pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of conduct unbecoming an officer. He received a formal censure and was reduced in rank. He had been given a script that Thursday morning. He had read it. He did not know everything Holt had planned, but he had read the script. That has its own consequence. Alpha 9 was formally acknowledged in the investigation's final report. Not reinstated, acknowledged. The report stated that the program had existed, had produced legitimate analytical work over 14 months, had been improperly erased by parties seeking to conceal fraudulent activity within its oversight structure. The 12 officers who had served in it had their service records corrected to reflect the assignment, including mine. I am the only one who knew it had been erased. I am the only one who had a copy. The USB drive is in the book now, behind my mother's collected letters from my father. 3rd shelf, 3rd book. I put it back when the investigation closed, not because I needed to keep the evidence. The evidence is in the official record now, preserved, permanent. I put it back because that shelf is where I keep things that matter. The letters mattered to my mother for 30 years. The drive mattered for 5 months. They sit together. That feels right. Dr. Reyes asked me once why I had made the copy on October 23rd, what specifically had felt wrong. I thought about it. I said, nothing specific, a pattern. The way the acknowledgments came back too quickly. The way no one asked follow-up questions. The way the chain above us felt more like a wall than a chain. She said, "You trusted the pattern." I said, "I trust patterns. It is what I was trained to do." She said, "They trained you to find the fraud. And then they were surprised when you found it." I said, "Yes." She said, "That is the part that will never stop being remarkable to me. Here is what 14 months inside a program that officially never existed taught me. When something feels wrong, document it. Not because you will necessarily need the documentation. Not because you are planning for a specific outcome. Because documentation is the thing that survives when everything else is erased. They can erase a program. They can erase records. They can erase assignments and designations and the official acknowledgement that something ever happened. They cannot erase a personal drive behind a book on a shelf. They cannot erase what you chose to copy before they chose to erase. Make the copy. Keep it somewhere that matters. And when November 14th arrives, be ready. Drop a comment and tell me your story. I read every single one, and subscribe. I am here every week with a new story. Same ending every time. She stayed calm, she stayed quiet, then she won.